Standby one. Let's go.
You are about to experience the uncensored conversations, stimulating wit, and the thought-provoking wisdom. Bold, raw, and uncut. Right now, on the LANCESCURV Show.
Welcome to another episode of the LANCESCURV Show. I really have to share how my day yesterday went. My day didn't go bad for me because when I get out into the world, I do so in a very detached manner. I'm there and I'm not there. So the strings that the evil entities out there try to pull, it doesn't happen. And I've mastered that. Many years of being out there, it's a defensive maneuver on a spiritual level that I do. It's almost like trying to punch Floyd Mayweather and hit him cleanly. It's very hard to do because he's an excellent defensive fighter. Well, everything that goes on in the physical is there's a parallel in the spiritual world. So I'm very great at being spiritually defensive, and I'm not saying that from an egotistical standpoint. That's just the way it is, and that's how I can preserve my energy and stop the spiritual vampires and leeches and rabble-rousers from draining me down. But this is how it went. Yesterday was. I had a gentleman get on the bus early on my second trip, and I was leaving downtown. And at this particular time, it's like the rush hour, really, really the rush hour. And he gets on every day, and he'll have a few words to say. Now, let me just describe this gentleman, okay? He is he's an alpha male. He's a black man. He's a black alpha male. This guy is I have to give credit where credit is due. He's a very handsome man. He's very well built. He's about 6'2", 6'3", and this guy has a thunderous Barry White type voice. But even more impressive, I'm dying to get his voice on the show. I'm dying to get him on the show. And he's a guy who he went through some rough times in his life. And he shared it with me. I don't think he minds me sharing it because he shared this on the bus with a conversation with a bunch of people, over time. Well, he did some prison time, and I think it was like about 1.5 years, 2 years. And it was for something unnecessary that he claims that he wasn't guilty of. And yes, people say, well, they all say that. But I see the sincerity in his heart and how he's trying to change. I believe he's from Detroit, Michigan, and he migrated down here to Orlando, Florida. And he does construction. And there are a lot of construction jobs down here right now, being the fact that Orlando is like the fastest growing city in the United States. And so there are a lot of construction jobs. I don't think he has any definite career field or area of expertise that he works in. So he's a guy that has a job. And physically, he's very strong. He's in his 40s, and he has an excellent command of the English language. And when he speaks just normal, most of the time, the people on the bus, they shut down and just listen. And he doesn't try to be loud or anything like that. But when he speaks, it's like, wow, this guy really, his voice is I wish I had his voice. Okay, put it that way. He has a really wonderful radio voice, and that's an element that many people wish they had. So now he's speaking to me. He gets on the bus, and I know after he gets out of work, he has a drink, okay? He's not perfect, okay? So he has this drink, and so it's not like you can smell an overwhelming amount of liquor on his breath, because there are people who get on the bus that just make me want to throw up, because I don't like that smell. It's a nasty smell to me. But he gets on, you can smell it a little bit, so it doesn't bother me as much. But he gets on, he's always pleasant, he's always courteous, and he has that kind of spirit. So there's nothing threatening about him, even though he can be very intimidating if he tried. He's a guy that I believe right now in an untrained state, if I threw him in the ring with a top 25 heavyweight, I'm not saying top 10, but between like 15 and 25, those ranked in the world, he'd probably knock him out and beat him. And I'm never really wrong about that. In an untrained state. If this guy was a trained, he would be something. But it comes out in every pore, every part of his being. And it makes me think, off topic now, how many of us that may be alpha males, very powerful, very passionate, physically strong, extremely intelligent, and we become targets in the system of white supremacy, right? And he'd be one of those guys, right? And I'm saying that for a reason. So he came onto the bus yesterday, and he's like, Lance, you know, I spoke at a function yesterday, and I really couldn't believe the response that the people, you know, gave me. And it was recorded, and they gave me the recording, and I listened to it, and I said, man, you know, I really couldn't believe that that was me, because there were some good things coming out as I shared my experiences. And it was a motivational thing for me, because it shows me that I have a lot to share, and I want to share more, because they couldn't get enough of my life's journey as I explained it, and how I came out of certain things, you know, because of God's good graces. So I said, man, you know, listen, you are very powerful. You are more powerful than you could imagine. And I said, we're all here for a purpose. We're all here for a reason. And you have a purpose, and you have a reason. And don't let anybody take that from you. Don't ever get discouraged or down where you lose sight of the fact that God brought you onto this planet so that you can do something to leave it better than what it was. You're an extension of the Most High, and you're to do his work. And don't fault yourself for anything in the past that you may have experienced, or, you know, done, or have been involved in, because that's what it is. That's the past. That's something that gave you the experience to be able to talk about what you talk about today, or what you did yesterday, you know, when you spoke yesterday, to impress these people to make a change in their life. So he's like, man, bus driver, you know, he knows my name is Lance, so he always calls me bus driver. He said, man, bus driver, you just, you know, you always encourage me, man. I want to thank you. There are a lot of people in the daytime when I work that try to, you know, put me down, or they're putting themselves down, and I can't derive anything positive. See, this is the kind of conversation we had, right? Now, he wasn't loud. And you know, I speak so low on the bus, you can hardly hear me when I don't want you to hear me. Now, I have a thunderous voice when I want to, not like his, but I can be very loud, you know, and I make sure that if the conversation is going to be between me and the person near me standing on the bus, it's going to be just that, because we have a lot of nosy entities that get up there and they just try to listen, and I don't know their intentions. You know, I have no problem, and I have nothing to hide, but this is a weird place. Orlando, Adam's Family style. So, all of a sudden there was a person midway, sitting halfway, toward the back of the bus, and evidently he had a conversation with this person about where they are to get off the bus. So he said, excuse me, my friend. And his voice is deeper than that, right? More thunderous. But he's like, excuse me, my friend, this is the stop you need to take. When we were speaking earlier, this is your stop. And he gave him more directions on how to get where he had to go. So he put his hand up, he put his finger up, you know, to get the guy's attention. And the guy got up, and he came, and he said, oh, thank you, whatever. But as he was putting his finger up, there was a woman who, I'd say, like, she was in her early 30s, maybe 30. And she was on the phone. And you can hear her talking, because there were other people talking on the bus. And as soon as he put his finger up, you know, this is profanity laced, and I'm not in the mood to quote these people, so you're going to have to use your imagination. You know, I'm just going to say it straight, but every other word from this young lady was a curse. Maybe I'll abbreviate. But as soon as he put his finger up to summon the gentleman and get his attention, she's on the phone, and my friend here was his arm. If he stretched out his arm, you'd have to have 2 extra arms before it reached her face. She was that far away, but yet she had a problem when he put his finger up, right, to point to the guy, to get his attention. And I saw nothing wrong with it. I'm not just saying that because he's my buddy. But as soon as he did that, she opened her mouth while she was on the phone. You need to keep your effing hand out of my face. And I'm like, whoa, the whole bus, the eyes opened up, and it was like, what did he do? And so the first thing, you thought was, well, maybe they had a prior confrontation. That had to be it. And so even he was shocked. And he was like, excuse me? She said, you heard me. You've been running your mouth ever since you got on this bus. I don't want to hear what you got to say. You need to keep your mouth shut, and you need to keep your finger out of my MFing face. And so he's like, well, excuse me. My conversation is for my friend here. If you were down in the conversation and didn't like what you heard, that's on you. But I don't disrespect women. So she's like, well, you think you know it all. Who are you? You're nothing but a bum. You're working with the labor pool. You're doing construction. You're this, you're that. And the negativity began to flow. And so when this happened, you know, as she started to talk, we all began to realize that she's a woman, but let's put it this way. She wasn't feeling it being a woman. She was trying to be a man. Okay. She was butched out, you know, to each his own, do what you do, but that's what it was. And I'm not saying this about all lesbians. I'm saying this about this particular one, which represents many that I see because I'm cool with a lot of lesbians out there in passing. Like, good morning, how are you? We talk a little bit in general, to each his own. I don't know what you do in your bedroom. It's obvious, but I'm not a fly on your wall to really confirm that. But it was obvious that she had a problem with my friend here, this gentleman, being so manly. That's what I observed. You see, and some women, and even some straight women, have a problem with black alpha males. And that's really what it was. And so he has the street in him too. She kept going in on him, and he had to come back. He said, listen, you keep running your mouth. I don't know who you think I am, but I'm about to straighten you out. Oh, you ain't straightening it up, S-H-I-T. You ain't going to do nothing. So. You men. Oh, when she said you men, I know that she had a problem with men in general. Again, this is not to say that all lesbians have a problem with alpha males, but this one did, and many straight women do. But she had the most intensity because, to me, she was looking for a reason to start with him. First of all, he was extremely positive in the conversation. And I believe she really couldn't hear what I was saying because I know if you're standing 5 feet in front of me, I can project my voice 5 feet and it's not going any further, right? If I want to project it 7 feet, I'm doing it because I want to. But if you're not that person or within that range, you're not going to hear, you're going to hear sound, but you're not going to be able to make that. That's one of my abilities, that I can speak in public, direct my voice, and you're not going to hear me unless you're within that space. So many people that were hearing him weren't hearing me, but they knew that we were in a conversation. And there's no way I could have been in a negative conversation when he was speaking so positive and we were getting along so well. But evil energy out there, negative energy out there, doesn't really appreciate that positive thing going on, especially at the end of the day. Remember, as a bus driver, me doing that now, because I've done many things and I'll do many things after, that is not my identity. I don't identify with that, but that's something I do to get that regular paycheck. As a person who sits in that seat driving that 40-foot bus with all of these people, trip after trip, hours on end, I get a chance and a very unique opportunity to study human nature. And you know what? That's one aspect of it that I love, because I get a chance to, and I'm not up in people's faces like that. I'm detached, but I'm very observant. And it's a very unique position. And all of the bus drivers listening to this, you have to agree. Now, many don't take it well because they're not grounded spiritually. So they go home after a long day's work and they have all types of demons attached to them. They have all types of negative energy coming home with them. You have confrontations, or people attempt to give you confrontations all day and unravel you. And they can't stand to see. They know that what you do is stressful. But when you know how to dodge the stress and maintain a righteous equilibrium on a spiritual level, they're bedazzled by that And they're like, oh, hell no, you are not going home after all of these hours with a smile on your face. Because the fact of the matter is, in a 10-hour plus day, there are people who work 8 hours. There are people who I pick up to bring to work. And because my hours are more than theirs, I take them home. And I see them fresh. I see them maybe not upbeat. They might be fresh and still negative, like, oh, I can't stand going to work. But they're a little more fresh. By the time I pick them up, most of these people are straight evil. And I don't understand how they can have such a low tank of positivity that it gets exhausted by the end of the day. And we all have days that are trying to us and we say, oh, I can't take. We'll say it, but we hang in there. Every day we hang in there. We know if we can make it back home to home base or the home plate. It's like baseball. You run around the first base, the second base, the third base, and you want to run back home. Well, home should be your charging center where you recharge yourself. And for many of us, it's just not that way. So we leave out on a low charge. But anyway, he got down and dirty too. And see, he in his mind, he had to show her, listen, don't think, and this is how many think, that when you present yourself as a nice guy, well-mannered, well-spoken, mannerable, considerate to the people around you, that's a sign of weakness. Now, I'm just going to tell it to you straight how it is. This woman, she lives on a place called Ivy Lane. In Ivy Lane, there are a lot of nice people that work there. There's a lot of nice people that live there. Oh, well, Freudian slip. There are a lot of nice people that work there doing things they should be doing, right? But there's a lot of nice folks that live there, but it has a really bad reputation here in Orlando. And I know it's amped up because stuff goes on everywhere, so I'm not going to follow through with the propaganda and say it's so terrible. But put it this way, this is one of the places in Orlando that really, really, really does have a reputation. And it doesn't seem that many of the people who live there are trying to stop it. But again, I have to say, there are a lot of hardworking people there. There are a lot of nice people there. There are a lot of people who are grounded spiritually there. It's just that they may not have the finances to get out of there because the projects over there can be off the chain. And if a week goes by where I don't see the cops up in there deep, or sometimes a day, right? But it's always something. That is considered the hood. And I hate to say that because, again, there are folks who are going to listen to this and say, Lance, it is, but I don't want to make it seem worse than what it is, but it can be really bad. It's one of those things that when you mention that name, Ivy Lane in Orlando, it's like, uh-oh, no, not Ivy Lane. I'm not going there. You live in Ivy Lane? I'm not dating you. You live over there? You better be outside when I pick you up because I'm not getting out the car type thing, right? So, anyway, this woman, I read her, okay? Look, we read people and people say, don't judge. No, I was assessing her. She's a lesbian who, in her world, cannot accept an alpha male in her space because in her mind, it's competition for her. When you see this man, you see that there's no, he's a man. He's a man's man. And that was very intimidating to this lesbian who was on the phone, who wasn't really speaking loud on the phone, but I heard her conversation. I heard she was talking, but I was more focused on my friend who was closer to me physically and speaking to me with that booming deep voice. But she picked up on the conversation because you know how sometimes you can have somebody near you on public transportation and they're talking, but they're still listening to your conversation while you're on the phone. Like they're still engaging 30% in their conversation, but they're 70% into yours. There are a lot of folks that do that. And on a human nature level, like when they say in the Bible about wandering spirits, I believe they do. Now, biblically, please help me. Throw some comments about what I experienced with negativity and evil and, but I know there are spirits that wander about. And yes, these are people, right? So, people get fooled and say, well, that's a person who's going to his job or he's going here, he's going home. But these people have spirits. These people have spirits attached to them, right? And they house these spirits. They welcome them through their activity or their state of mind sometime. So this is why I have to keep my mind extremely positive, extremely motivated, extremely goal oriented. Like, today, this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to sit on the phone for an hour and a half talking about some other YouTube personality or somebody down the block, or gossiping about a person. These are my goals. This is what I have to reach and attain for this day for it to be complete. 99% of the time I do. Sometimes there's that 1% where things happen and I'm delayed with my time and I have to leave it for another day. It's like even now, I have enough work piled up for the next 3 or 4 days that I can put stuff up on the internet. I don't even have to do this conversation right now. I have enough stuff to entertain you guys and to keep content on my channel. But you know what? Since I cut out the fluff in my life, I have so much free time to relax, to travel, and to create. So I like to keep the ball rolling because I'm motivated that way, right? But back to the whole situation, it really got bad to the point where I thought, because this woman was not backing down, and to me, her exchange with my friend brought up old confrontations that she didn't win. And in her mind, I'm not letting this one go, because she was not embarrassed on that bus the way she was talking. But my friend got the best of her because he spoke intelligently, and he had the power and the force and the physical intimidation, which people would say, well, why would you have to intimidate a woman? Well, this woman acted like a man. She came off like a man. She stepped to my friend like she's a man. Well, guess what? In the street, you just might get the treatment of a man. This is what I don't understand about so many women, and I have no hate in my heart for women, but those who are out of line, I must call it. Know your position as a man, and also you should know your position. You must be a gentleman. You must be long-suffering. You must treat your sisters with a certain respect and respect womanhood. But when you step out of womanhood, it's no holds barred. You can't expect to get the decent woman treatment and the respect when you come at a brother who showed you some restraint at first, but he let her have it. It was funny though, I'm not gonna lie. He let her have it. I can't recall exactly what he said, but he threw a few curse words back at her, but he really got her with the intellectual attack in responding to her. And he sat her down basically. Even though she kept yapping, she clearly lost the battle. And it got to a point where she said something about cutting him and reached in her pocket. And so he reached in his and said, well, we'll both just cut each other up. And he was more than capable of doing so. Now, it got to that point now where people, after they both got off, she got off first, and you know, he had his verbal victory lap, and people were laughing, you know, at her mainly because she was out of order. That was a general consensus. But there were a few women sitting there on that bus who were pissed off because this man, who they probably had a problem with anyway, defeated this evil energy that manifested in this lesbian black woman. And you could see that they wanted to take their shot. And so when he got off, they kept talking and they kept sucking their teeth, and they wanted to bring or continue and focus on me, because many people, they look to the bus driver driving the bus to be that authority entity who will straighten everything out. But the fact of the matter is, I can't do everything. The fact of the matter is, I'm supposed to drive that bus, and there's certain legalities involved in certain places I can't go. Morally, I wish I could. But as far as everything legal to maintain my job, once I get up out of that seat or once I involve myself, I am still representing the company. So there's certain things I can't do. And many people know that, but they still want to throw off on you. Bus driver, you shouldn't have let that go on that long. Look, my kids are getting grown, right? Most of them are. I got one more left that ain't so-called grown, right? But if my kids are grown and I don't have to really babysit them, how am I going to babysit adults? Now, look, morally, I'm not going to be afraid to jump into it, even if it puts my job at risk. If I see a man beating down a woman, I can't be a man and let that happen. Say, oh, my job won't allow me. But if you're arguing with somebody, what do you want me to do? Get in the mix? They're grown folks. They know what they're doing. And the ride is not going to be that long. Unless somebody's putting their hands on somebody. If it's two grown men fighting, I'm opening that door. You take it outside. I'm not a referee. But if a man is putting his hand on a woman, something like that, that's a different story. So these people who are on the bus that think, well, you should be the person to police everybody. I can't do it. This is public transportation. You wouldn't last on a job like that if you were to police everybody, because you can't win. There's still boundaries here. So many women who are getting off the bus, oh, you handled that wrong. You handled that incorrectly. They just wanted to throw off on another man who definitely has some authority in the situation as far as me driving the bus, right? But really, you just want to throw off. Fact of the matter is, the bottom line is, there are many women out here who have a problem with a man who, many of them don't have a problem with a man who is physically strong, but they don't like to see these types of women, not all, but they don't like to see a man who, when you look at him and you can feel his presence, it's like, dang, this is a man. And the funny thing about it is, before he left, he said something to the effect of, you see that woman there? She's not used to seeing a real man around. And she's probably going to go home and play with herself and think about me, pulling her hair, giving it to her. Not sorry to get so lewd, but it made sense. Because a lot of these women who don't know what a real man is, they may have a male around them, but they don't have a man around them. And they can rule these males. Because a lot of these males out here have no direction and they have no goal. This goes for all races, but I'm specifically speaking on my black brothers and sisters, right? So don't think I'm picking on anybody, but this is my experience. And they're so used to ruling over and having their way, but deep down they're resentful at that male for not stepping up to the position. Now, on the flip side, what's so funny, when they see a man symbolically in passing that could be that man, they buck against that too, because they got so used to having the freedom and so-called authority in their household. It's like this. You're a kid, and a normal 3-seater couch would seat 3 people, but you're a kid, so your backside's a lot narrower. So 5 of y'all sit down on the couch to watch TV, right? And it's just right. It's a perfect fit. Or say 6. And one person gets up to go to the bathroom, and you spread out. You have more room to sit down, right? And it feels good. It's more comfortable. It's not as tight as it was when there were 6 people there. So now that person comes back to sit down, and everybody's spread out. So it seems like there's no space. Now you got to give up that space, and it goes back to normal. But you would have rather wow, it felt good when there were only 5 people on this couch, but now the 6th one comes back, and I got to give up that space. That space wasn't yours to take. It was reserved for that person, that other kid who went to the bathroom. So now we have women who, they live like this. They might have had a male in their life, or maybe one time they had a man. What do I mean by the difference? A man is a male, but he has wisdom. He has vision. He has drive. He has goals. He gives direction. He provides. And in this society, we most likely have to have both people in the relationship work. And yes, more power to you if you don't have to have it that way, if the man can provide everything. But there are many women who, they're disappointed in the males around them or in their life, right? And then they meet a man who is a real man, and because when they see that man, they realize what they don't have, and they get pissed even further. So either they'll gravitate toward that male, or they'll reject him, because the reflection of his presence at that particular time makes them realize what they're lacking. And how they take it, that's on their own personality. They can feel as though they failed. They can feel as though they're inspired, like, wow, there are real men in the world. Or they can look back on their life at the types of men they chose as mates and feel really bad about it because they realize that they chose good-looking, slick-talking males that never followed through with the responsibilities of the children that they gave them. We have many opportunistic lesbians who, well, ain't nobody else around. Might as well get something going with this person, and some don't mind, they don't mind receiving oral from another woman. And it's like they make ends meet, but they're like a slave on the plantation, ready to break off the plantation. Like if they find a real man, it's like, oh my God, I'm running with him. And yes, it's true. There are many, and I'm not using this particular section, particular rant to down or knock lesbians, but since I'm on that subject, by a show of hands, everybody, how many men here have been engaged sexually with lesbians? Meaning that many who claim that, it's only a front. It's only like, I'm doing this for now type thing. Or that's a whole other subject, but there are many who are like, they want a man. And when they see a man, not just a male, but when they see that real man, it does something to them as a woman. Now, I'm not going to sit up and say, like other guys say, oh, I'll straighten you out, or you deep down, you just want a piece of this DICK. I'm not going to run around saying that, but it's the reality because it's happened to me time and time again. Even if I wasn't looking to pursue anything with this particular person, you see this look on their face and it's like, wait a second, you told me you're a lesbian. This is the past now, right? But it's like, wait a second, I'm a lesbian, but I'm still a woman. And you're like, okay, you know what I mean? And they want you to hang out with them. And then hanging out, everything hangs out and you realize. And then they go back to being a lesbian to the outside world. Even stronger because they got recharged and recalibrated. I'll say it that way. And maybe I'm going to piss some people off, but I just have to say it that way. Take it as entertainment. But that wasn't the end of my day. I want to hear your comments on that, but I want to say something else. And it was like yesterday to me, there was so much evil in the air and it hovered around my bus, but thank God it didn't touch me. But I have to say later on that evening, there was a gentleman who boarded my bus from downtown, and he usually doesn't board the bus downtown. He used to a whole lot. And this gentleman is a homeless gentleman, and it's obvious that he is homeless. He's been homeless for the many years that I've been driving. He never bothers anybody. He's a black man. I'd say he's about maybe in his early 40s. He has really long dreads, and that's convenient for him because he doesn't have to worry about, once it's dreaded, it just grows. He has long dreads. Not just like orderly dreads, but thick, frightening dreads. There's nothing frightening. I said that for effect, but it's like, these are dreads. You can't deny it. He's mannerable in his movements, and he usually hangs out around the end of the route, which is far away from downtown, as opposed to many who are homeless who stay near downtown where they have the soup kitchens and the shelters and different things. And, the homeless kind of gravitate, around each other and they share their resources, or, they're all in the same boat. So they talk and they share their stories, or they do what they do, and it passes the time. With homeless here in Orlando and abroad, I've noticed that, they have lots of time, when they are feeling defeated, if they're not trying to do anything for themselves, which I can't even, I'm not saying that like they're not trying to do something for themselves, but on that topic, that's like, it's so multifaceted. I can't even there's no one size fits all explanation to explain why a person is homeless. Because again, like I said on another video, you have the mental, the physical and the spiritual and emotional. Some guys are out there, and I mean women and men when I say guys, but some are out there. Say, for example, right, on the emotional level, they were married for 10, 15 years and doing really good. And they came home and found their wife in the bed with their best friend, and it blew their mind. And they lost everything. They had a nervous breakdown, and they couldn't function to hold down a job anymore, and they lost everything. Or on a spiritual level, there's just some people out there that they have been affected by generational curses and things that are on them that are so entangled that they don't realize it's a spiritual thing. They can be intelligent sounding and speak with you and make much sense, but they just have an issue that cuts into their life that doesn't allow them to make progress, right? So you have all of this stuff going on. Mental issues, and that explains itself, so it could be a swirl of many things. So it's not for me to really try to put anybody into a box, but this is where they've ended up, in this place called homelessness. And it's a place that any one of us could end up in. Some people don't have anything wrong with them. I'm not saying there's anything wrong, but things happen, but they just lost a job and couldn't find work and just tumbled down the rabbit hole, right? And they're completely sane, and they keep their head above the water. They're a little sad, discouraged and stuff, but they don't last long there. They pull out. But there's some who are just there in that place. Sad to say, seems like forever. Every story we've got to understand, and this is what kind of wakes people up from La La Land, from whatever childhood upbringing that they had. If it was a rosy one where, everybody rides off into the sunset at the end of the day and everything is all right, you realize that in this life, it's not always going to be where everything's going to be all right. It's never going to really be, for some people, where the situation is going to have a happy ending. And now you have to recalibrate how you take reality, how you see this world. And then you say to yourself, and many say, well, is there a God? Why would God have people end up this way, or things not end up, happy at the end? And some people don't want to see it. That's why there are people who don't want to see homeless people or see certain negativities happen and know or use it as an example or a lesson to say, you know what? I need to increase my chances on having a happy ending by submitting to the laws and rules that are divine. And still sometimes, we can get in a plane crash, a car wreck, or get cancer, or not wake up one day after looking like we're so healthy. We don't know, but everything happens for the greater good. We just don't have that vision to pull back and see the overall. We came here, we're going to leave. You still have that spiritual level, so you want to do all you can. You want to sharpen your spiritual swords, because the body is going to be gone. It's going to go back to the earth. That's obvious. It's excuse me. It's refreshing, but it's also on a human level, when you're not all the way there on a spiritual level, it could be frightening to many people. It used to be frightening to me. I mean, as a kid, you're looking at this person, they were up walking around, and look at them, and they're in a casket, and they're going to be under the ground. So you're thinking as a kid, like, oh my God, I wouldn't want to be put under the ground. But that's the body. It's like you throw down your shirt, you throw down your underwear, your socks, right? Streaks in the underwear. They got to go into the washing machine. You are not your underwear, but that was up with you. You are not your shirt. You are not your socks. You don't say as an adult, oh, I'd hate to be in all that water and soap and suds getting tumbled around inside that washing machine. No. So that body that's down in the ground, that's what it is. That's not you. You are somewhere else. It's like the old shirt that you threw down, or the underwear that you took and threw down. It has an expiration date. The car you drive, you can keep it up as well as you could. 99 times out of 100, you are not going to be driving that car if you live 50 more years, 50 years from now. You could, keep it garage kept, keep it perfect, all the stuff. But normal wear and tear is going to wear it down. But let me get back to what I was saying. This guy, he gets, and there's another moral to the story that's different from the evil that's around us, So I've never really had a chance to speak with this guy. He's quiet. I never knew that he was extremely intelligent, right? He was just a quiet guy that would swipe his card and ride down to the end of the bus route around Dr. Phillips Hospital, around near I-Drive on the other side of I-4, for those who have come down to Orlando. If you've ever been on International Drive, there's a Walmart on the other side of I-4. We call it the Turkey Lake Walmart because it's on Turkey Lake Road, and that's where my bus goes down. And at the end of the bus route is Dr. Phillips Hospital. So behind Dr. Phillips Hospital is a bunch of huge lakes. It's a lot of woods. And they have a lot of condos and townhomes and subdivisions. But when you get behind the hospital, you think that lake is like, it's just a little lake. But it's connected to bigger lakes, right? So it's like one big lake, but it narrows down to like, how could I, maybe like say about the length of 3 or 4 buses. And then all of a sudden it opens up into a huge lake, and you do have a lot of alligators in there. You do have a lot of water moccasins in there. And for those who don't know what water moccasins are, those are snakes that are very predatory. They see you and they will come after you to bite you. It's not like, oh, there's a snake. If he sees you from a distance, he's going to start wiggling to come to get his fangs in your backside. So you don't want to go near a lake that has water moccasins. Or if you do, you want to be careful that, there's enough clearing where you can see, and you better watch your back. No slow romantic walks near that lake because your ankles are going to get tore up. So the daytime is usually calm, but this guy, he lives back there, right? Lots of times at nighttime, I'm too lazy to go way to the hospital, so I'll find a tree to answer the call to nature. And as I'm answering the call to nature and my senses become acclimated to what's going on around me, I can hear him talking to himself. But he's not crazy. He's just doing what I'm doing because I'm talking to myself. It's just that I'm recording it right now. So I've heard him speak recently, and he's made a lot of sense. This guy reads the Bible. You could see him on different bus stops sitting there in the sun with his shirt off but this guy, he's really doing bad. It's gotten worse over the years. I noticed last night when he was sitting on the bus that he had duct tape around his feet. And I felt so bad. I'm like, I got to reach out to this guy to help this guy. So when I was departing, I tried to start up a conversation because he was sitting toward the front. And it's gotten kind of cold down here for Orlando. So I had the heat on in the front of the bus, and I let it go back. If I put the whole heat of the whole bus on, it gets too hot. So I kept one of the windows cracked, and I let the heat in the front of the bus just go throughout the whole bus. So he gravitated toward being toward the front. And that's why I noticed what was on his feet. Straight up silver duct tape wrapped around like 10 times over each foot up to the ankle. So that let me know that he wasn't taking that duct tape off anytime soon. And he's out there, and I guess he dips his feet in the water and stuff like that. But I guess he had his own unique way of surviving because he's been out there for well over a decade, put it that way. So with the resources that are here, you can tap into that. It's not impossible. So that kind of tells me that maybe, just maybe, he's somewhat content with that. So I had a Ziploc bag with bananas and apples and stuff that Mrs. Scurv put in my bag, right? So toward the end of the day, I know what I'm going to bring back home. And what I knew by this time, I'm not going to eat this, right? I already ate several already and other things. So discreetly, I said, hey, brother, and he looked up and I held up the bag. And he said, no, brother, I'm fine. Thank you so much. He said it so intelligently. So I was like, wow. And I heard that this man does speak with people on a religious level. So, but the way he said it, it wasn't that he shot me down, but it was just like, he was like independent. And folks like him or folks who are in wheelchairs that you offer help, they go, no, I got it. They don't want pity. I understand that. They do want to maintain their dignity. So you have to respect that. So we We get further down in the line, and I'm like, I still got to help this guy. I'm looking at this guy's feet through the reflection of the windshield, and I'm like, no way. I got so many shoes at home. I got so many clothes at home. There's no way that this guy should be in some ripped up shorts, tattered, ripped up, tattered clothes and a ripped up bag that the bag is like, it was a good bag, like a knapsack, a really big knapsack, almost like a duffel bag, but that was shredded also. And it's like, somebody's got to help this guy. So as we got down toward the end, there was no one else on the bus except him and I. So I tried to, I got to the end, the last stop, which I'm supposed to sit there for like about 10 minutes or so before pulling up and to keep with the schedule. So I said, my friend, let me ask you something, man. I said, you need shoes? I got a lot of shoes that I can help you out with. He said, no, I'm okay. I'm going through my religious meditation. I was like, okay, this is a conversation starter. So I said, religious meditation. I said, could you explain like more to me? Not that you have to, but I'd like to know what you mean by that. You know, he says, no, just religious meditation. He says, I'm in the world, but I'm not of it. I'm not part of this world. I'm passing through. And I said, you're so right. I said, but we all are. You know, I didn't want to challenge him, but I wanted to extract and bring to the surface what was in him because I thought it was interesting. Because really and truly, in the recent last few years, I've always wanted to, and I wouldn't do it to exploit him or anybody, but I would love to sit down with this guy more so with the camera or at least with the recorder and the mics and really talk to him for a long time if the conversation is something that we can extract something from, you see, because I lean toward thinking that this guy was brilliant. So, and this is a funny story now, right? Bear with me. So we're in the back of this big hospital and he's always back there and we have security back there. You know, every now and then they come out there in the darkness because it really doubles as a hotel or a lover's lane. Cars park up over there, activities and aerobics transpire, the fogged up windows and the tossed condoms and so on and so forth. But that happens back there a lot. And, you know, security will come back there. So he didn't get off the bus. So he said, listen, I need to get to the hospital. I said, we're here already, man. He says, no. He says, my oxygen level is low and I don't think I can physically get off this bus. And I was alarmed because this guy really, when you look at him, he's extremely healthy. Aside from the fact that he can be, the body odor can be kicking sometime, but he's out in the elements. He's not eating. I never saw him eat anything bad. I've always seen him eating fruit or something wholesome. So he's out there in the sun all day, getting sun, reading his Bible on the bus stops or in the back, in the woods. So he looks a mess according to man's civilization. But I know that by him being in the elements and surviving out there like that, it's not wearing him down. That's not, some people, it will wear them down because they're eating bad food. They might be on drugs. But if you don't have a traditional house and you're out, you got to deal with the mosquito bites, being bit by different bugs, just the elements. When it rains, you have to seek cover. And if you don't, the rain's not going to kill you. So he has a Rastaman kind of healthiness to him, meaning that the ones up in the mountains who are out of civilization, but they're still, you know, build their homes, their little homes and eat the food and they're not part of it. So he comes off that way, although he's an American, right? So before, and I have to correct myself, before he made that statement about his oxygen level being so low, when I asked him if he needed anything, he told me, he says, I really do need an inhaler. And I said, what kind of inhaler? There's so many different types. And he told me the type of inhaler that he needed, right? So I said, okay. I said, I'll get it. I'll keep it on me. Or if you want, after work, I'll get it and I'll drive down here in my own car and I'll find you and I'll give it to you. And he said, whichever way, man, but I do really need an inhaler. So I said, well, listen, I don't know if I'll see you the way things line up, but how much does it cost? He told me like around $8, $9. I don't know. And I had like $11 in change on me. And so I said, here, man, take this. You go get your inhaler whenever you can. And that way you'll be straight, because you might need it before you see me tomorrow, if you see me tomorrow. So he says, thank you, brother. Thank you so much. So I felt good about that, you know, and this is what we have to do. It doesn't always translate to money when you help somebody out. But in this case, it did. And I thought he was sincere. And I say, I'm letting on, right? So the next stop on the bus was going to be right by the emergency room, because this is a fairly sizable hospital, right? So I said, listen, I have to sit here for the next 10 minutes. I can't move. The bus is GPSed, and if I go beyond this time point, I might get written up. But if you really need to help, I'll call my base and tell them that I'm going to break the time point because it's a medical emergency. So he'll say, please, if you can, please, because I'm not going to be able to move my body on my own. I'm going to need a wheelchair. So I didn't realize the position I was being manipulated into. So I pull up, I called my base, got that straight with them. They said it was okay. And I pulled up to the next stop. There was nobody else there. So I lowered the bus, secured it, and I told him, I said, I'm going to go into the hospital. I still got time before I move off. I'm going to go into the hospital, and I'm going to get somebody to bring a wheelchair out here for you. So I went there, and they were very courteous and cordial. The security guard, 2 of them came, and I knew one of them. He used to be a passenger with me, this white guy. It was good seeing him, too. I told him the situation, and they brought it out to the bus. I was like, wow, this is easier than I thought. So as they approached the bus, I opened the doors, and I told the guy, I said, listen, they're here. And so okay, let me get the story straight. As we were walking toward the bus, and I had the security guards, 2 of them walking with me, and one had the wheelchair, he asked me, he says, well, what kind of situation is this? I said, well, there's this guy who's claiming that his oxygen is low, so evidently he had some issues with it before. I said, you might know him. I offered this information. He didn't ask me. I said, you might know him. He's a homeless guy that's always around on hospital property. He's a black guy with dreadlocks. He says, oh, God, him again. Now I'm like, uh-oh. I just gave this guy $11 in change, right? Right? But it's about how you give it. So I'm not nitpicky on the money, right? So he says here, and they talk amongst each other, him again. He was trespassed from this. If this is him, he was trespassed off the property. So we get to the bus. I load the bus. I tell the guy that they're here. And so the security guard jumps on the bus and he says, listen, you got a medical issue? The homeless guy says, yeah, I got a medical issue. And he says it with an attitude to let me know that they had a run-in before. He says, yeah, I got a medical issue. He says, the security guard said, I'm telling you from now, we can't deny you any medical treatment, but as soon as you get your medical treatment, you're off the property. And so the guy was like, I know that. He says, He says, this is what we're telling you. You're going to get your medical treatment and you're off the property. You're not going to get a bed and lay up in here when we have people who need beds, and sometimes we don't even have enough room. You're not going to occupy a bed on some foolishness. So let's go deal with it. We're going to wheel you in, but we're going to wheel you right on out. I was like, wow. So this guy has a history of this. So one of the security guards wheeled, this guy away. And I called the other one back and I said, I'm not trying to find out this guy's business, but what's up with that? He says he's been doing this for years. He's back there. He's homeless. He chose this area to stay in. But what he has been doing is something that would definitely get him trespassed. It's private. This is private, situation, but I'm not going to tell it. But it's something that you would not want your family around, and it's something that's not decent. I'm like, whoa, this guy didn't come off to me like, when he said indecent, well, maybe he was taking dumps back there, using the bathroom. I wouldn't think that was it, because animals back there do that. It was like, he's not going to do that in front of, was it something sexual? Possible. But then again, you're homeless, but then I know some homeless guys that, or I've heard of some homeless guys that they masturbate. just craziness. That's a different subject. Pinky's out. Big shout out to Efren. Talking about bags. Anyway, inside joke. We'll talk about bags one day. But, yeah, so I realized that kind of, sort of, I got hustled. Even when a situation obviously looks a certain way and you want to help, sometimes you get hustled. And you just don't know how people come at you. You really don't know. As much as you can live life, and I've been aware from single-digit ages back in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the new millennium, and now the 2000 teens, I can still get taken for a ride because we have evil and deception all around us at all times. It doesn't mean that you have to consume your positive life force with what the evil people and evil forces are going to do. But all I'm saying is just be aware of them. And don't ever feel that you have enough experience or so much experience that, oh, I'm exempt from this because I'm a scholar on life and I'm a scholar on human nature. It really is a chess match out here. The main thing is that you maintain yourself, you maintain your sanity, and like that cell phone battery that you may leave out of your house with 100% charge, you always want to come back home, at least in the 90s. You don't want to get drained and come back with no charge and can't make a conversation. So understand that it's not just what you see in people, but it's an energy thing. And even when you see them and think that they may contain positive energy, it could be a Trojan horse in a mask. And it's just like you have to maintain your stuff. Look, anybody who has flown pigeons and they have a pigeon coop, say in an inner city, and they're on the top of this one building, and maybe a block or two over, there's another guy who has a pigeon coop with hundreds of pigeons, and you both throw up your pigeons into the air, and all of the pigeons all together from both separate coops, they intermingle and fly together, and they get caught up with each other, and then one will whistle and signal their pigeons back down to their particular coop. Don't you understand that if you had 300 pigeons, after they mix up with the pigeons from the other coop, you might have 327. You might have confused those other pigeons and 27 come back to yours. So now you gained. Moral of the story, the analogy is, when you mix energy with people and you don't know what their energy is all about, sometimes you'll come back short, sometimes you'll come back with more. If they're positive and you're positive, it doesn't drain them to give you some of their positivity, so you'll come back with more and they'll go back with more because iron sharpens iron. But the bad thing is, what you want to avoid is mixing energy with these strange entities when you don't know the content of their heart. And they can have a smile on their face and they can say all the right things. But after you mix with them, that 100% charge that you had is now down to the red and it's 3%. And they snatched your positivity. Not that they needed it. Most of them don't want it. But they don't want you to have it.
Make sure to check out the boldest blog at LANCESCURV.com and follow Scurv on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube under LANCESCURV.